Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a case today that,
Oh, this is a good one.
it's juicy. It's an Indian Supreme Court case. And it kind of reads like,
A soap opera.
yeah, a total soap opera, online dating, a whirlwind romance, and then accusations, arrests. Oh, and a huge fight about money. The usual...
Sounds like we've got a classic deep dive on our hands.
Oh, absolutely. The case is Rinku Baheti versus Sandesh Sharda. It was decided just last December 2024.
Yeah, this case really gives you a look into how complicated marriage and divorce are in India these days.
So, it's not just like some gossip column, right?
Yeah.
What makes this case so special that we're talking about?
No, this went all the way to the Indian Supreme Court. That's their highest court.
Yeah.
And it brings up some big questions, like how marriage is changing in India, and how the law is trying to keep up.
Okay, you've got me hooked. So where do we even begin with this story?
Well, both Rinku and Sandesh, they'd been married before, and they met on one of those matrimonial websites, super common in India. It's like arranged marriage, but online.
So no, like love at first sight here.
Nope, not really. Things moved pretty fast, though. They got married soon after meeting online, but it wasn't long before things started to, fall apart.
How long are we talking?
Just over a year after the wedding, they were both filing for divorce.
Wow, that's fast. What went wrong?
That's where it gets interesting. Rinku accused Sandesh of cruelty. That's grounds for divorce in India. But she didn't stop there. She also filed, a bunch of criminal complaints against him. Some serious accusations, too.
Wait, cruelty? What does that even mean, legally?
Right, good question.
Yeah.
In India, it's not just, your partner being mean. Cruelty, to get a divorce, it has to be behavior that really hurts you, mentally or physically. It makes living together impossible.
So it sounds like things got really messy.
Oh, they did. It wasn't just accusations either. Sandesh got arrested at the Mumbai airport.
At the airport. Now that's drama. What was he arrested for?
Well, it all stemmed from one of the criminal complaints Rinku filed. Shows you how fast a marriage fight can turn into a full-blown legal battle.
Okay, so we've got a quick marriage, cruelty accusations, criminal charges, and an airport arrest. What was Sandesh's side of the story?
He said the marriage had just completely broken down, irretrievably. He even filed for divorce 3 times. But there's a catch. The Hindu Marriage Act, it governs marriage and divorce for Hindus, and it doesn't really say irretrievable breakdown is a reason to divorce.
Hold on, so how do you get divorced in India if your marriage is just over?
It's complicated. This case really highlights that. You see, even though the law doesn't say irretrievable breakdown, the Supreme Court, they have started to acknowledge it sometimes. They have this power, Article 142 of the Constitution, and it lets them deliver complete justice, even if it means going beyond what the law specifically says.
So they can be like, look, this marriage is over, even if the law doesn't say so.
Exactly. It's like a safety valve in the legal system. It lets the Supreme Court make things fair.
Okay, I'm starting to get why this case is a big deal. But I still don't get it. Why wouldn't the law recognize that sometimes marriages just end?
It's a good question. It has to do with history and culture in India. Marriage has always been seen as sacred, not just a legal thing. And divorce, it was a huge taboo, especially for women.
So the law is just catching up to how people see marriage now.
Yeah, that's part of it. But what about those criminal charges? Some were really serious, right? Yeah, that adds another layer of complexity. It raises questions about whether legal provisions were misused, especially in a divorce where emotions are so high. The judgment actually mentions this. Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, it's about cruelty from the husband or his family. It's meant to protect people, not to be used as a weapon in a divorce.
So someone might just throw a bunch of accusations out there and see what sticks.
Right, and the Supreme Court seemed to be addressing that, sending a message that you can't manipulate the legal system for, revenge or to get ahead.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Remind me again, what were the actual charges against Sandesh? What happened at the airport?
To really understand, we need to look closely at the accusations, the events leading up to his arrest, and how that all played into what the Supreme Court decided. So about those charges, Rinku used several parts of the Indian Penal Code, like Section 498A, which we talked about, that's the cruelty from the husband or his family. But then she also used 406, that's criminal breach of trust, and even 307, that one, that's attempted murder.
Attempted murder? Wow, that's a big jump. What happened?
The details about the attempted murder, those are kind of vague. The Supreme Court judgment, it doesn't really go into it much, but it looks like Rinku said Sandesh, try to hurt her, physically.
Yeah, no.
During some big argument they had. That, along with the other things, that's why he was arrested at the airport. It seems like the authorities were worried, for Rinku's safety.
It's got to be so stressful. I mean, for both of them. Just sounds like total breakdown of communication and trust.
Yeah, for sure. And this is where what the Supreme Court said about misusing the law, it becomes really important. They said, laws like Section 498A, they're vital to protect women from violence at home. But they also said these laws, they can be misused, in cases where the real reason is something else.
Like to get revenge.
Yeah.
Or to have more power in the divorce.
Exactly. The court, it seemed to be hinting that maybe, in this case, even though Rinku felt wronged, and probably for good reason, some of those charges, maybe they were more about putting pressure on Sandesh or to get an advantage in the divorce.
I can see that. Divorce is so emotional. People do things they wouldn't normally do. But what about the irretrievable breakdown thing? If that's not an Indian law, how did the Supreme Court even deal with it?
They used something called judicial precedent. So basically, they looked at older rulings from the Supreme Court. In similar cases, there was one, Shilpa Sailesh versus Varun Srinivasan, and in that one, the court basically said, look, even though the Hindu Marriage Act doesn't specifically say it, we get it. Sometimes a marriage just can't be fixed, and it's better for everyone to just end it.
So, they set a new kind of rule, even though the actual law didn't change?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, we see what's happening in relationships today, and we're going to interpret the law in a way that makes sense for how things are now.
That's kind of cool. It seems like they're trying to keep the old values, but also, be realistic about how things are changing. But what actually happened in the case? Did the Supreme Court let them get divorced?
They did. They looked at all the evidence, heard both sides, and in the end they said, yep, this marriage is over. They dissolved the marriage, they threw out the criminal cases against Sandesh, and they told him he has to pay Rinku a big chunk of money as a final settlement.
Okay, let's talk money. How much are we talking?
It was 12 crores. So that's 120 million rupees. A lot of money. It's even more than what the family court had first recommended.
Whoa, so after all that fighting, it came down to money.
Well, it's more than that. Remember, Rinku wanted way more at first. The Supreme Court, they tried to be fair. They knew the marriage was done. But Rinku needed to be okay financially, especially because in India, there's still a big stigma around divorce, especially for women.
Which brings me to something you said before about divorce being taboo in India, especially for women. Can you talk more about that? What are some of the challenges women face after divorce?
It's complicated, deeply cultural. Traditionally, women in India, they relied on their husbands financially. Divorce could mean social isolation, money problems, even finding a place to live. Things are changing slowly. More women are independent. People are changing how they see marriage. But that stigma, it's still a big factor in a lot of divorces.
That makes the money part of this case even more important, huh? The court couldn't just look at the law. They had to think about how Rinku would actually live. It's not just about money. It's about her well-being in a society where, divorce can be really tough for women.
Yeah, definitely. It shows that law isn't just some idea. It's about real people, real lives, and the whole social context.
This is such an Indian story, but it also brings up stuff we all deal with, right? Love, marriage, divorce, how much money someone gets in a settlement. I mean, haven't we all had our own relationship drama or wondered about that money stuff?
Totally. This case, all the twists and turns, it's like a glimpse into what it means to be human. Makes you think about the promises we make, the problems we face, how we deal with love and loss.
And it shows how the legal system is always trying to adapt, like irretrievable breakdown. It might not officially be in Indian law, but the Supreme Court was willing to consider it. That says a lot about how marriage and divorce are changing in India.
Right. It shows laws aren't set in stone. They're always being interpreted, reinterpreted, sometimes even challenged as society changes how it thinks and what it expects.
Makes you wonder, what about the future of marriage and divorce? Not just in India, but everywhere. Are we going towards irretrievable breakdown being the norm, even in places where culture or religion are very strong?
That's a great question, one that we should think about more. But before we get too far ahead, let's go back to this case for a second. There's another important part, the power dynamics within marriage.
Yeah, the power dynamics. This case really shows how those can work, especially when a couple's getting divorced.
Definitely. You got to think, in a lot of places, like India, the husband is seen as the head of the family. But in this case, Rinku's fighting back against that. She's not just sitting there. She's going to court, filing charges, asking for a lot of money.
It's like she's using the law to, make things more fair.
You could say that. She's using what she can to get her rights. to make sure she's okay. It's part of a bigger trend. Women in India are speaking up more, wanting equality in marriage and, well, everywhere.
That's pretty cool. It breaks that stereotype of Indian women being quiet or, not having power against tradition.
Exactly. And it's not just about one woman. Cases like this, they can start conversations about gender roles, what people expect in marriage, the legal rights of women.
Like one case can make a difference.
Right, like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court's decision, it was about this one couple, but it could change how other divorces are handled, especially the money part, and whether irretrievable breakdown, if that's enough to get a divorce.
So this isn't just about one messy divorce, huh? It's about bigger changes happening in India, maybe even around the world. Like, what is marriage, really? Who has the power, and how does the law keep up with all of that?
It's true. This case gives us a peek into, personal lives colliding with the law and society changing. It's a story that makes you think about relationships today and how we're always looking for what's fair, what's just.
This has been a wild ride. We started with an online dating site and ended up talking about some really deep stuff. Marriage, divorce, power, social change. Amazing what one case can teach us about, being human.
It shows the power of stories
in
court and outside of it. And it reminds us that the law, when it's working right, it's not just